Welcome one and all to Let's Play The Legend of Zelda for the Nintendo Entertainment System. Yeah, I did say that I was branching out, and I'm finding every excuse in the world to not play the next Metroid game, I suppose. Snicker, snicker, wink, wink. But, yeah, I figured that, you know what, I'm kind of feeling the rush, so why not go ahead and get a head start on the Zelda series? Like Metroid, it's one of my favorite video game franchises ever. It's kind of slipped down a little bit just because I've kind of branched out and played more things over the years, but, me and Zelda, man, we go a long ways back, and I'm talking, like, preschool years kind of back, so... Yeah, I've been with this franchise for a very long time, and, it means a lot to me. Definitely one of my top 5 favorite video game series ever, for sure. I definitely plan to play most of these games in order, but unlike Metroid, I don't know whether or not I'm going to be tackling every game on my lonesome, because we're now a collaborative channel, so maybe we'll have some other members pick up the slack and probably play other games along the way too. We'll kind of find out as we go along, but yeah, I'm playing this right off the Zelda Collector's Edition, which I just bought 2 days ago for like 50 bucks. God damn. That thing fetches a pretty penny, let me tell you. And I bought it for the sole purpose of doing this Let's Play and just having easier access to the 3rd and 5th gen games respectively in a much more comfortable fashion, because god damn it, I am not setting up an NES just to play these 2 games in particular, Zelda 1 and 2, which is what I'm referring to at the moment. But yeah, Zelda 1, it is very archaic, very outdated. The sense of direction is fucking bonkers. This was definitely a relic of its time, and it needs to fucking stay there. God damn it. But, this won't be done in the same vein as Metroid 1, however, because in Metroid 1, that Let's Play was kind of a mess because I had to kind of, like, make numerous jump cuts just to kind of pause whenever I was taking a look at the guide or not, because fucking Norfair, man, I hate that place with a fucking passion. And then, with this game in particular, since I go a further ways back with Zelda 1 than I do Metroid, I'll admit, I have a little bit of nostalgia for this game in particular. I first played this when I was 6, and I'll get into the details of how that came to be as we progress further along into the Let's Play. And, yeah, I might look somewhat competent in comparison. We're not going to be pulling out any guidebooks for this one, folks, so it's just going to be straight up me playing right off of instinct from beginning to end. First quest anyway, I don't know if I'm going to be doing the second quest or not, because that still kind of requires a bit of memorization on my end, and, yeah, I don't think that's going to be fun for anybody to sit through. Let's just be a little bit real here. But yeah, Zelda 1, I first played this game when I was 6. I don't remember if I've brought up this story before, but, my grandmother owned an NES in my grandfather's basement, and, we had a bunch of NES games. Like, I owned my own NES when I was 4. It was actually the very first console I ever had because my aunt, she's like 14 years older than me, so she grew up on this as a kid, and she kind of handed it down to me as a pass-me-down, and that's kind of how I got exposed to games in general. And, but I didn't have this game at the time. My first Zelda game I'll be getting to eventually, but, no, not my first Zelda game. This is not my first Zelda game, but this is definitely one of them. And, in this game's case, what the deal was is that, we had a bunch of different NES games at my grandparents' house. Like, you name it, we had fucking Mega Man, which I also got exposed to at the time. We had Ninja Turtles, Zelda 1, a lot of the relevant Zelda games, even though, you know, we didn't have stuff like Metroid for whatever reason. And, it was honestly through them that I really got my jump start into gaming, quite frankly. Just kind of just like diving into these franchises as a whole and getting my hands on what to expect from other games. And I guess maybe having my standards a little bit lower than usual, because this was around the time when the 64 and PS1 were still running dominant, and I didn't have polygon graphics to spoil me just yet. So yeah, if you ever wondered like why I have a tolerance for retro games, me growing up on them is a partial reason as to why. I'm 24 years old after all. And so basically, with Zelda 1, me and my cousin would take turns playing. Take turns according to him, because every time I died, like, he basically just kind of scoffed at my gaming skills as a whole and just kind of took the controller from me and snagged it away like a bitch and just played it for the rest of the time we were there. It kind of sucked dick, I know, but later down the road, like, my grandmother just decided to go, hey, I'm gonna give you this NES game here and a bunch of other ones because we can't trust JT with them, and you seem like a good kid, so here you go. And that's kind of like just how I started getting into collecting games as a whole. But yeah, wouldn't you know it, starting off an NES game by telling a life story. But Zelda 1, it's definitely what inspired games like Breath of the Wild, that's for damn sure. It's a lot more non-linear than any other Zelda game after it, outside of Breath of the Wild, and that can definitely be a good or bad thing depending on who you are. Like, you have to remember, like, the demographic for video games was a lot different then than it was now, because it's like, nowadays, like, we don't have the fucking patience to sit down and, like, you know, spend 5 or 6 hours in the overworld before we can actually make a move on. We had to, like, actually, you know, sit down and explore the world and take it for granted and not have these, like, little check marks, like, pointing us in every direction, like games akin to Xenoblade Chronicles, for instance. Had to go out there and trial and error the fuck out of everything, and, yeah, you do have your NPCs here and there that will give you, like, vague hints as for where to go, but otherwise, yeah, good luck, buddy. I can't imagine how hard it must be trying to pick up this game in the year 2018 when, you know, when people are trying to avoid the internet and then they kind of have to resort to it because, good God. Like, even the map here is fucking cryptic. Like, you see that gray blob on the top left corner there? That's your fucking map. That just tells you where you are in the overworld, but, like, that's, like, that's pretty much sugarcoating it right there. Like, I can't really tell you, like, where exactly we are, unless, like, you know, I've played this game thousands of times, and, like, had the experience from the get-go, you know? Like, even I, as a kid, had to have a map to basically figure out where I was going, because, not only was, like, you know, the NES kind of, like, my first exposure to really getting into video games. Like, I mean, yeah, the SNES was technically my first, but the NES was what really got me hook started. Zelda 1, as well as, you know, just most other games on the NES, really, were, like, my foundation for getting into a bunch of other things, like, researching games and getting into magazines, because, my grandmother at the same time also had introduced me to, Nintendo Power, and, wouldn't you happen to know it, it was also, like, the very first issue, too, and it had, like, a map of the overworld from the second quest. Because why not, right? And I kind of used that as at my leisure to kind of find my way through the overworld and even help, like, basically find out, like, stuff like the Lost Woods maze and what have you. So yeah, it's like, I'm aware of it. I'm totally aware of, like, what it must be what it must feel like to have gone through this game and try to trial and error my way through everything. But at the same time, it's like even I had to resort to a guidebook at one point. Even as a young kid, I know. Like, it was enough for me to just look at pretty pictures and go, oh, hey. I guess that's where I am in the overworld. I look at these little blurbs here and just kind of get, like, little tidbits here and there. And that was kind of, like, how I flew through the game, mostly. Because, for the most part, in Zelda 1, like, besides the level number, like, outside of, like, maybe 2 or so dungeons, you're not totally encouraged to have, like, a dungeon item to go into the next. And in fact, most speedrunners usually opt to go towards level 2 first instead of level 1. And it can be very daunting just to get a good sense of direction as for which level you need to go next, because the difficulty curve definitely heavily relies on the fact that you go to each and every dungeon in a specific order. Otherwise, you'll find yourself in situations where you run into overpowered enemies, and hoo boy, not having the blue ring on hand, which is, you know, your defense armor up mechanism in this game, it'll totally fuck you in the ass, let me tell you. So how I plan to go about this Let's Play is that I do plan to get all of the items, I do plan to get all of the heart containers. I'm not going to be going after every single fucking grotto, though. Like, you can kiss my ass on that one, because even I still don't know where all of them are at, and I don't particularly care to go out of my way for all of them either. I just kind of plan to go after a select few, so I can grab all of my rupees, so I'm not having to grind the entire Let's Play, and just kind of wing it from there. Because, hoo boy, if I got stuck doing rupee grinding, this would be an even longer experience than it needs to be. Because, for the most part, like, the only way you can really get a high quantity of rupees is through, like, you know, gambling or finding, like, these secret routes. Because otherwise, like, it's not like any other Zelda game where, like, you can get, like, 20 rupee drops or 10 rupee drops or so-and-so from beating an enemy or what have you. No, you have to, like, kind of, like, settle for the scraps, like the 1s and the 5s. And even the RNG is kind of dependent there on which ones you roll. So, that kind of sucks dick. Another thing I'm going to be using here in this Let's Play that you're going to be seeing me use a lot is the boomerang. Like any other Zelda game that comes, you know, after this one, like, there's going to be your fair share of dungeon items, some of which may need to be used to access other dungeons or to continue onwards, or others just to kind of simply better suit your offensive capabilities. The boomerang, it's kind of like a big trade secret between us, like, Zelda Classic Let's Players and shit. That's kind of like how I'm looking kind of decent in Zelda 1, is because I played a shit ton of Zelda Classic, and if you don't know what that is, I have a friend on this same channel who's doing a Let's Play of Neverending Fantasy, which is a mod that I made using a similar-ish Zelda 1 engine, so yeah, I have my fair share of experience just messing around with Zelda 1's mechanics in general. So, yeah, while I might not be the best as far as, like, the actual core game is concerned, I'm familiar enough with the mechanics to kind of just wing it through and just kind of go off of intuition. But yeah, the boomerang, going back to the boomerang is the most broken piece of fucking shit ever. Like, you can aim it diagonal, and it's the only weapon in the game I can think of that allows you to do this. And it can stun almost any enemy in the game. And you can just kind of take it and throw it at enemies like this, and they'll just be stuck in place for as long as you keep smacking them with the boomerang, and it's absolutely ridiculous. So you're going to be seeing me rely on the boomerang a lot, and so if you don't like me not resorting to weapon diversity, I don't know what to tell you. That's just how I roll when it comes to playing Zelda 1 based games, or just Zelda 1 in general. But yeah, getting all the heart containers, getting all of the items and upgrades. We're probably not going to be getting all of the maps or the compasses, though. I'm gonna be kind of winging my way through the dungeons, more or less. So, yeah, this is going to be kind of like one of those Let's Plays where I'll just kind of breeze through and just kind of talk about my experiences with the core game, and I'll give some tips and tricks along the way, but beyond that, it's going to be mostly casual with a hint of, like, hardcore tips here and there. Definitely not going to be as casual as Super Mario Land 2, where I look like a complete dumbass, falling for things that, you know, I shouldn't be falling for in an otherwise very easy game, since I actually do have a fair bit of Zelda 1 experience. But you know, you get the idea. You get the idea. And oh my god, I'm about to get crapped on by these gorillas. Don't crap on me. Thank you. Ugh. I'm not used to using the control pad on the GameCube controller either. Like, all of that fidgeting around that you saw me doing was me trying to, like, move in a specific way to get out of the boomerang's line of sight, so I'm not getting smacked around. And, you know, in this game, like, the way the shield works in early Zelda, you know, Zeldas 1 through 3, is that you simply just stand in place of where the projectile's going to be, and it's going to deflect off your shield, no problema. And, yeah, using the GameCube's control pad isn't the best, you know, way around it, because, you know, I love the GameCube controller. It's easily, like, one of my favorite controllers ever. But even I have to admit, the control pad is very flimsy. And I guess I can kind of see why, because, like, Nintendo was a company back then that treated 3D so seriously. Like, you know, with consoles like PlayStation, for instance, like, you still have your fair share of 2D gaming, but, like, I don't know, did you ever notice, like, with the N64 and the GameCube, to an extent, that there weren't really a whole lot of 2D games in particular? And, like, even the controllers kind of showcased this too, because the control pad was just kind of put in an out-of-place way to where it kind of feel a bit cumbersome if you went out of your way to use it. And it was like, hey, bitches, use the fucking control pad. Well, not the control pad, but the analog stick. God damn it. But yeah, what I'm trying to say is the GameCube's control pad sucks. I don't like using it, but I'd rather use that than the control stick, because, oh my lord. The fact that Zelda 1 and Zelda 1 only is the one game in the series where you can't move diagonal, but you have to go up, down, left, and right, and that's exclusively it, basically means that I kind of have to make do with it anyway, because, ugh, I don't want to use the control stick and be like, oh god, what am I doing? Why am I fidgeting around in all of these directions I shouldn't be fidgeting around in? But yeah, whew, 200 plus rupees. We are already at 250, so I'd say before we close off this episode, we grab ourselves the blue ring before moving onwards, and then we're gonna save our money up for a magic shield and possibly a candle or so. You gotta do a lot of money grinding in this game, let me tell you, because there's a lot of essentials you need to move forward, especially in your first playthrough, because if you don't have, like, the room layout memorized in Zelda 1's dungeons, then you're gonna find yourself in situations in which you have no idea where you're going. This is early NES era magic. You kind of need this item to progress onwards, otherwise you're gonna be stuck in situations in which it'll be uncomfortable as fuck and not fun to navigate through. But yeah, it's like, you do have, you know, like your NPCs that tell you where some dungeons are in particular. Like, you saw when I went into that waterfall earlier that there was a lady who would give me information if I paid her, and that's kind of like one of your alternatives to finding your way around the world if you don't have a map on hand, but even that by itself only gets you so far. Because from what I gather, like, I'm not an 80s kid. I couldn't tell you. I was born in the early 90s, so I barely even classify as a 90s kid by itself. But, apparently this was, like, one of those games where you had to, like, play it, and then, like, while you were at school, you kind of told, like, your friends, like, oh my god, did you know I found this, like, one dungeon under a tree? I was just kind of playing around with a candle, which had very limited usage, by the way, and then, holy fuck, suddenly level 8 appeared. That's the kind of cryptic shit you have to get used to in Zelda 1, for fuck's sake, because, again, I just don't imagine how else you'd find it otherwise without word of mouth. I can tell this commentary is going to be very unfocused, but you know what? I'm just gonna wing it. I'll just say what comes to mind, I suppose. So, let's go ahead and kill off this lever here. Now, one nice thing about the levers, and some enemies in particular, is that from what I gather, like, some enemies have better RNG drops than others. And it's also something that a lot of speedrunners utilize when they're trying to find out, like, what enemies are best to farm on so they can get through the game faster. And, because you need to buy stuff like the arrows, after all. That's not something you can really work around. And, stuff like levers and tektites are going to be your go-tos when it comes to grinding money. And how bombs, definitely bombs, need a lot of those. You only get so many of them in this game. And shoot, I wish I had a candle. Because intuition is telling me that there are a few burnable bushes nearby, but I don't have anything to burn them at the moment. I could wait till level 7 to get the red candle, which is an upgraded version of the default one, but you'd be missing out on some good secrets. And heart containers. And stuff. Okay, so I'm just now remembering that this isn't one of those games that follow Mega Man 1's logic where you scroll off screen and then you pop on the other side of it, or back into it rather, and then like the enemies come back and you have to fight them all over again because why not, right? It's not the kind of situation I wanted to put myself into. So we're gonna get some rupees, we're gonna get some ruples. Boy, that hurt. You jerk. Oh wow, here they are. I think how it works in this game is that you have to go like a certain number of screens off from where you beat like all of the enemies on, and then you come back to it after like 5 or so screens, and then they respawn. I think it works something like that, which I feel like is probably the most ideal way of handling like enemy respawns, to be honest with you, because I don't want them to be totally gone to where I can't get their spoils. That would suck. So let's see, can we get some money off these levers here? A little bit. I promise that, like, you know, from this point onwards, that I'm going to be mostly relying on money that I get from secrets and just dungeons in general, because, like, I want to show you guys just how annoying it is to, like, rupee grind in this game, because outside of, like, the secrets, as I have mentioned earlier, you know, money resources are pretty limited as a whole. And heck, I mean, like, even on your first few playthroughs, if you don't know where these secret grottos are at, this is going to be your method for farming money. But the ropes in level 2, the snakes that we fought earlier, those are also, like, good sources of income if you ever need, like, a quick shot at some RNG for blue rupees and such. Getting there. Near about. I certainly do not want to enter level 3 without having a blue ring on hand. Get over here. But yeah, I promise. I promise that every other sequence of me, like, grinding rupees and such for items will be done, like, off-screen or what have you. Or just progressively as we go through this Let's Play. But, yeah, now that we have 250 ruples, we're gonna head over here so we can, check out, the site of where the Armo statues are. Get out of my way, thank you. And that's kind of your super secret hidden shop. We'll be coming back for that bait on the right later on. Again, you really need rupees like the plague in this game because without them, you're not going to progress very far at all. But yeah, we got ourselves the blue ring, which might as well be the blue tunic for all I care because it turned our outfit blue after all. And it looks nice. I don't know why, but like I always kind of like this shade of blue in particular. It's like a baby robin's egg blue or whatever. I wouldn't have it any other way, to be honest with you. But anywho, I'd say that about does it for episode 1 of Let's Play The Legend of Zelda for the NES. So next time, we're going to head off to level 3 and onwards, and hopefully not get too lost in this cryptic overworld. So thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you all then.